In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special edition and episode of the Ogle County Peer Support Network. And we are recording from the Chaplain's office. And here with me in my office is Deputy Chief Mark Lewis from the Mount Morris Fire Department and retired Chief Mike Lewis from the Byron Fire Department.
Yes, sir.
And you're looking really good with that Ogle County Peer Support shirt, man. I tell you, that is just happening. I'm a little bit jealous and that I didn't wear mine, but I was a little cold today, so I threw on the sweatshirt. But you guys are must be firefighters or something, short sleeves. And, we've got a couple of things I think that I want to say before we get started. And first and foremost is thank you guys for being here. Short notice from me. And I said this is a very special edition because of the topic or the subject. And the only rules for this session is that there are no rules. Just speak honestly and openly, and there's nothing off limits. In fact, I believe that the only way for us to help people who are dealing with things is to be honest with them, rather than we're always checking a box. We have to do it this way, so we're going to do it this way. We're going to check the box. And, we've learned how to speak the language. We've learned really how to hide from the truth, haven't we? So the subject for this podcast is first responder suicides. Now, instantly, when you hear that, someone is going to think, oh, well, I've heard this before. Well, that would be a mistake to tune out what we're about to say because you think you've heard it all before and this doesn't apply to you and I'm not at risk and I don't fit the profile and, I go to my mental health check-ins that are mandated by the department and blah, 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 blah. So when it hits close to home, and I say hits close to home because it is directly impacting and affecting people right now that I care about. I have a very close personal friend and colleague. In fact, we went to Bible college together, and that narrows it down to multiple thousands of people it could be that I'm talking about. But we're both serving as pastors, and we are chaplains. And so when he informed me of a suicide in his department, and then he told me who it was, I knew, oh boy, I've got to address this and talk about this. And I come from a family of Leo's law enforcement officers. He has family members who are serving active duty, and this is a subject that's very important and near and dear to our hearts. And what he said to me is, our job as chaplains, as peer support, is to help give people the tools and to help look after them spiritually and emotionally. That's our job. That's what we said we would do. Is we will help you. We will help you foster and build resilience. We will help you, learn how to deal with things. And of course, when I say learn how to deal with things, I mean, are you ever really ready as a first responder? When you're doing the job and you hit the streets or you do whatever you do, I mean, are you ever really ready for what's going to build up in you? And how could, we might cover some of these things in class, and there may be ongoing sessions, continuing education, but the bottom line is life happens and things take us by surprise, or they build up over the process of time. And I'm not sure how much I will personally share of my own circumstances and situation, recently being on complete overload, complete caregiver burnout, and dealing with emotions of my wife and I still haven't processed the death of her mother. We haven't had time to process and grieve. And so she has the same bad habit that I do. My wife holds in her feelings and I hold in mine. And there's good and bad to that, because I said to my wife the other day, I said, she asked, why are you so grouchy? And, why did you snap back? Or why did you seem so impatient? I said, the problem with me, like you, dear sweetheart, is that I hold on to my emotions and then they squeak out when you don't want them to or when you least expect them to. Now, for some people, things squeak out and they're a little bit more devastating. In this case, some of the details that I can share about this particular case that really prompted me to do this podcast. Incidentally, we've taken a break so that we can look at our systems and try to figure out how to do things better. The Ogle County Peer Support Network exists to, well, obviously, we want to be a trusted voice and a resource that is valued. In other words, not just something that you have to, I guess I got to listen to this because it's the chaplain, at least I could tell them I listened. No, I want this to be a valued resource where you want to listen. And then we can give voice to just about anything. Obviously, we certainly would like to be a voice for first responders and their families as well. And all they would have to do is say, hey, could you talk about this? Hey, would you comment on that? We can do it with complete confidence.
Right.
Or if they decide, hey, let everybody know that I sent this question in. I want them to know that, I submitted this question. We'll do that too. Mm-hmm. No big deal. But this is more of suicide is more of a problem than people realize. And what my friend said to me, and of course I talked to him ahead of time, so he knew that I was going to be talking about this, but that I would protect his identity and the identity of his agency. They are not within our state. That's probably all I'll tell you. But here is the victim, a 36-year law enforcement veteran. What's even more troubling than that is that this is the peer support leader and coordinator of support resources. This is the one who handled critical incident debriefings. And so you've got somebody who knows how to talk the talk, right? Knows what to say, knows how to operate beneath the radar. And I'm not trying to say it in a negative way, but I'm just trying to say that, listen, it's not hard to circumvent the whole process, if you will. The system, we know how to bypass it because we operate in it and we know what to do. We answer the question the right way. But here's a law enforcement officer that took his life recently and sent shockwaves through a department, through a community, and here we are talking about this just days later. And there are some things that my friend had said to me that I thought we should discuss and have you guys comment and just see where the conversation goes. And the first and foremost thing that really struck me, and again, I don't want anybody to jump to conclusions about what we're going to say, and I know what this is all about, because
I don't think they can, because I don't think we know what we're going to say. Do you? Because I don't.
I don't either. I just put down some things that my friend shared with me that I thought we should at least share with the audience. And the first thing, which is so important to me, I love this. This is just, it screams out at me. He said, this guy didn't fit the profile for someone who was at risk or would ever be at risk. It just completely floored me. He doesn't fit the profile. How the heck could this guy do this?
In the cases that I've looked at, that is the overwhelming factor that you always hear is, I would have never expected this individual to have done this. And it's always that bubbly person who is always helping everybody else, that you think doesn't have a care in the world, that has everything going their way, has been a great responder, has everybody's attention in terms that, that person is high on their list. In this case, this victim was actually high in the department too,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think sometimes that is a factor that, and maybe that's a later discussion, that is overlooked for administration. Where do they go? How do they filter through? And and I'm just going to say this now, it's not the calls. I think we do a pretty good job with the calls in terms of those memories. And I'll be honest, there's many of them that I can look back and play back in living color, Dolby sound, the whole works. And I mean, it's very vivid. Total recall from decades ago. But those didn't really bother me as I look at it. It was those administrative things that you run into, the politics oftentimes of the job that we are kind of saddled with, that aren't productive. We look at it, this is not productive to the mission that we're in, but it's something you have to work with.
I like the fact that you said it's not the calls, because and obviously you and I have worked together quite extensively. We've attended trainings, how to recognize the signs, how to prevent suicides among first responders. And through the years, we've done a better job of building resiliency, through health and wellness. We have things that are set up and in place to help people so that, yes, you are absorbing the trauma and you find better ways to allow that, get rid of those stress chemicals and so forth. One of the great strides that we've made, and of course, chaplains have been around forever. Mm-hmm. And have been a part of the law enforcement and fire service forever. But
actually, in this country, pre-United States of America,
yes,
when the early settlers with George Washington going back before our Constitution and the Great Fight, when they were actually still fighting the Indians, they had chaplains. He made sure that they had chaplains.
Mm. I love that, because leaders who are sharp, if you will, who are forward thinking, who understand some things, they understand how valuable a chaplain can be. An embedded chaplain who is a part of your family, a part of your agency. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there. There are some chaplains who are paid. They are full-time chaplains who are paid, so they are able to respond more and do more than, say, a career pastor who has commitments. Sunday morning, I have to be here in my pulpit. I mean, that's my church is going to get very upset if I not show up on Sunday.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. So, you have Sunday, you have Wednesday, you have other events and functions, and so. But if you are a paid chaplain, you can certainly be more accessible and available. But you have to understand that is a huge step forward to say, hey, we want our chaplain on scene. We want our chaplain to be notified. Because a chaplain, as one chief had said, very well put, you guys and gals help absorb negative energy. We want you on scene. We don't want you to act like you're a firefighter or a police officer on scene. We want you being the spiritual presence, absorbing that negative energy and watching over us.
And I'd like to highlight that for a second, because that's very, very true. Especially from the standpoint, we don't want you fighting fire. We don't want you doing CPR. We want you there. That presence is so important for us as first responders. It takes such a load off, like you said, in absorbing the negative energy. But I can remember on calls that I were on where it was very heightened and being in a command position. And I remember you just putting your hand on my shoulder and immediately a lot of that stress just disappeared. And honestly, that's when the incident turned for me. as an incident commander in being able to not have that candle moth syndrome, but being able to take in the whole thing and more, which was just like
hypervigilant.
Yeah. It was made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're throwing ladders, if you're on the pump, if you're doing anything else, and the phrase that I like to use for chaplains is don't just do something, stand there. Take it in, because you'll see it on our face, and the Lord will show you as a chaplain who needs to be talked to afterwards, who could use that hand on the shoulder. It's very, very simple, honestly. But I just want to highlight that it's good for the chaplain to know what's going on. That, okay, they're going to pull hoses now. They're going to ladder the building. Ritz here, so this is going to be going on for their own safety, as well as just being able to anticipate maybe the potential needs of the chaplain at that scene. It's just like our safety officers. We don't want our safety officers throwing ladders. If the safety officer's throwing ladders, something's wrong.
Yeah.
That person needs to be hyper vigilant. I got it out that time.
Hypervigilant. That's a fancy word.
As to what's going on with the crews, looking for things, and if he feels overwhelmed, he needs to get somebody else appointed for maybe the other side of the building or whatever the scene is dictating, so that the safety of that scene is paramount. That's how we protect our firefighters.
Well, and chaplains have to be properly taught as well. So when a chaplain shows up and says, well, I just want to be useful, I want to do something. Well, chaplain, you are, just by showing up, number one. And don't just do something. Stand there. Be a presence. Don't underestimate the power of presence alone, putting the hand on the shoulder. But see, chaplains, just like everyone else, I mean, we're not all created equal. We have different levels of commitment, passion, understanding, et cetera, so forth, and the reasons why we get involved and do things. And we had to weed out some at the beginning, admittedly so, but as a safeguard, as a resilience building mechanism, having a department chaplain or an agency chaplain is very important. Having the right chaplain, and it takes time to develop relationships, right? And so there's a a thought that came to me too, is that we've got some catchphrases and we do ride-alongs. At least that was the thing for we got to do ride-alongs to get to know the officers, or and of course my friend said to me, doing ride-alongs isn't working.
No, because seldom, if a chaplain's in there with you, I think you're going to be, especially if it's like a forced on, if the officer asks the chaplain to go with, there's a reason. Right. And that'll be productive. Right. But otherwise, you're going to be guarding what you say.
Yeah.
You're gonna, like you said earlier, you're going to give the right answers.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways that my suggestion is, and of course, understand this, I mean, we're just throwing a bunch of stuff out there. My hope is that people are going to be listening, and administrators, folks who are in a position to make some changes and to really make a difference for their department as well. But why couldn't we say, hey, listen, chaplain will be available to do ride-alongs if you would like to request a ride-along with the chaplain. You can do it confidentially or whatever, rather than forcing it so that we're checking a box. It's like, check, I rode along with Mark, check, I rode along with Mike, check, Steve, check. It's like, okay, well, you have some law enforcement officers who feel like, I got to babysit him tonight? It's like, well, see, that's, I understand that thinking. But now if you have an officer, a deputy, whoever it might be, that says, hey, yeah, I'd like to put in a request to have the chaplain ride along with me. Now you're one step ahead of the game, I believe.
The other thing, there's a stereotype with that if I would like the chaplain to ride along with me, the fear in the back of your head is, what are they going to think's wrong with me because I want him to come along, or I want them to come along, or, where that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's building that relationship up so that, God forbid something happens, you're not establishing the relationship out the gate. You've already got it.
Yeah.
That you're more apt to speak to them, and having you around for a long time, I mean, you hear things you don't necessarily want to hear, but you don't think, you never look down at me because of what I would say. That was always a safe spot. So don't let fear of what are they going to think, whether that's admin or whoever, just don't let that get in the way.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't.
Right.
That's a real concern.
Yeah. I think it comes down to, come back here. Just like for a firefighter, it's their nozzle. For an officer, I'm sure it's their gun. It's a tool. And if let's compare the chaplain as a gun for law enforcement. So if here you're given a chaplain, big deal. Honestly. The same way you're given a new gun. You don't know anything about that gun. You haven't had the opportunity to say, I want that gun. Here's your gun. Here's your chaplain.
Right.
So in order for that to work for you, whether it's the chaplain or the gun, you have to get to know it. You have to see how it works, where the safety is, how you load, how many does it hold. I don't even know what I'm talking about with guns because I'm not that good. If
So
we get him
relate it to
started,
what you know about and don't do a nozzle. Use a fire engine.
yeah,
Because anybody can take that nozzle and open it. That's not the problem. More relatable to that gun would be a fire engine because you buy that new fire engine, it's got a pump, it's got a tank, it's got everything it needs to be effective, except the person operating it.
otherwise it does nothing.
It does nothing.
Yeah.
So that first call that you take it on, you're putting your faith in that engine, and you don't know that engine yet. So there's always this little thing in the back of your head. Does it pump like the old one? Think of, you can go with this. The old ones made noises and chattered and tread plate moved, and you didn't have to look at gauges. You could listen to it, and you knew what that engine was doing. Now you've got this thing that you don't know. Well, you're not going to be as open to believing in it and trusting it because you don't know it. So same thing.
Knowing it,
What pump?
that's the answer.
Yeah.
And that's where the training comes in. But I think that's extremely important for first responders to understand what that chaplain is.
Yeah.
And I think we got a podcast not too long ago where we talked about some of that stuff.
Well, and I think if we're serious about making, because, and this is now, I would say this is my professional opinion. It's not even a personal opinion. We're not really getting ahead of the suicide thing.
Right.
So we haven't made progress. We've made progress, but we haven't made progress.
Yeah.
The
We're
numbers-
not even doing a good job
No.
of reporting.
No, of course not. And so now you have to stage something so that you'll still get, your family will get benefits and, it'll be a line of duty death. I mean, that would be a question I would want to ask now. And I did ask the question. So will this be handled as a line of duty death? We don't know yet. It should be. It should be. And with all of the honor, with all of the benefits, with all of the rights and privileges, I mean, we're talking about changing the culture is what we're talking about, which is a seemingly insurmountable task. But because we have a whole new generation, it seems the older we get, you've got multiple new generations coming on, they think differently than I do. I'm a baby boomer. You're a baby boomer. And we think differently. But as much progress as we have made in the addition of a chaplain, a dedicated chaplain, a department chaplain, now how do we utilize that chaplain? How do we access what that chaplain brings and provides? How do we use the resources? And you can know how to use the resources, but then you can't force people to use the resources, but you can certainly do whatever you have to do. And one of the things that my friend had said, the ride-alongs alone aren't working. He said that if you see something, say something doesn't work, you have to take that to the next level. If you see something, do something. So in other words, it's not okay for me just to say, we got to keep an eye on Mark. Well, no, now I'm going to do something about it. And I don't know what the doing part is, because this is not a one size fits all. It cannot be. You bring the resources to the agency, to the community, and you make your agency and your community aware that there is a suicide epidemic. Come to find out, in this region, as with many regions, there are multiple first responder suicides, and it's more of a problem than anybody realized. What do we do now? Well, we have to do something different. And we've got to take it to the next level now. And those of us who are seeing it and who have the burden, if you will, to do something, because not everybody's going to feel the way I do. Some people are going, dude, I got my hands full doing my job. Well, isn't this your job? Now, I happen to have a bit of a fire underneath me right now to have the conversation. That's not going to happen for everybody. That's fine. I'll carry this torch right now.